Hi, folks. I'm Dr. Nizami, a gastroenterologist. Hopefully, everybody's having a good Sunday. Today, we are talking about a special type of anger that is called righteous anger. Now, righteous anger is completely different than regular anger that we are aware of. Regular anger is a knee-jerk reaction, a reflex. However, righteous anger is a well-thought strategy that we need to work on to culture and to develop. Let's talk more about this. Now, let us go a little bit deeper into righteous anger. Righteous anger has been mostly or more often appropriated into a religious context. Old Testament is replete with such examples. In the New Testament, John 2:15 tells us the anger that is described to be righteous anger when Jesus got really mad. On John 2:15, drove them out of the temple, pouring out the coins, overturning the tables. It's an overt manifestation of being upset, anger at something that is perceived to be unjust. Quran, on verse 134, goes on to state, who restrain anger and who pardon the people, and Allah loves the doers of good. On verse 5:8 of Quran, it goes on to say, do not let hatred, anger of a people to prevent you from doing the just. In Korean language, there's a separate name for overwhelming anger. It's called han, something, a feeling, an emotion that overwhelms you. It could consume you. Now, what is my view, my commentary, my experiences on righteous anger? It is completely different than the biblical story of turning the table or pouring out the coin. To me, righteous anger is more subtle, less obvious. It's more simple, it's beautiful, and it's controlled. The biblical examples of righteous anger is dramatic. Things that is happening right away. Everybody sees it. You are visibly angry. But to me, righteous anger is more subtle. It's not overt. It's over long term. It's not immediate. Anger is something responds right away. On the other hand, a righteous anger is not something right away. It's not a moment's reaction. It's continuous. It's over the long term. Very importantly, anger, or the traditional anger that we talk about, is a state of emotion. Righteous anger, on the other hand, is a state of mind. It's a long-term, sustained. It's part of your psyche as opposed to part of the moment. Anger and righteous anger, although connected emotions, actually their origin and their habitation in our brain are in two different parts. That's what I believe. Anger is the older part of our brain, fight and flight response. It's the innate response any living being has. However, righteous anger, on the other hand, is more pervasive. It may origin in our older part of the brain, but it is controlled, modified, and it is residing in the newer part of our brain that controls our emotion, that develops our intelligence, like the frontal, prefrontal, and temporal lobes. Therefore, although connected emotions, they are in many ways different. Righteous anger is a strategy. The traditional anger is a disorderly action. Righteous anger is constructive versus destructive nature of the overt anger. Righteous anger is thinking as opposed to response to the moment of traditional anger. Righteous anger is controlled, thoughtful. Overt anger or traditional anger, on the other hand, consumes oneself. It's an immediate, it's a visceral response, but not so with righteous anger. Righteous anger builds, traditional anger destroys, as you have seen the example that I have given you before. Righteous anger is subtle. People may or may not know that you have the righteous anger, but they will see this in your action. On the other hand, traditional anger or emotional anger is overt. Everyone knows you are upset, you are mad. I say righteous anger resides in our brain. Traditional anger resides in our heart. Righteous anger is necessary. Traditional anger, overt anger, maybe not always. Now, folks, we are coming to the last part of our discussion. I will end the discussion by giving you certain examples, as well as personal example of righteous anger. Of course, it's in my own interpretation, in my own mind. Another good example of righteous anger in a group of people is State of Israel. Disgusted by centuries of discrimination, mistreatment, insulting treatment, and genocide, the Jewish people got together and formed the State of Israel. Of course, one could ask question whether now it is directed at the wrong people. However, Israel is another great example of such moral awakening by a righteous anger. And I love that emotion. I see examples of righteous anger in Singapore when, at the onset of independence, Malaysia rejected Singapore as part of them. How the first Prime Minister got mad. He cried upon the rejection and promised himself to make a great country that Singapore is today. Another such example I see in Korea, specifically South Korea, disgusted by centuries of domination by the neighboring powers, overwhelmed by their culture, Japanese, Chinese, Russian, United States. They had a moral awakening with righteous anger. They became one of the most developed nations in our world. I hear the stories of personal righteous anger and how it had improved from my friends and patients all the time. Let me give you an example from one of my patients. His parents were neglecting not only him, all his brothers. They were left alone. They were eventually picked up and sent to an orphanage. Due to that righteous anger of being abandoned, he learned every bit of work that he could. He acquired every bit of skills that he could in the orphanage and became a very successful person, became a supervisor in an oil company. That's the story of personal triumph by using righteous anger. Now I will finish this talk by giving an example of righteous anger in my own life and in the life of my family. See, when we were growing up, my parents were teachers. All our extended families were richer and well-to-do than us. When I was perhaps 12-year-old and my sister was a couple of years older than I am, we went to a family wedding. Going to the family wedding, we realized we were the most ill-dressed kids to be around. Even the house servants of my relatives had better clothes than us. We felt tremendously ashamed, and later on, it turned into an anger, not an overt anger, but the righteous anger. We promised ourselves to dedicate ourselves with the help of our parents into education, and all 9 siblings of us together. We studied hard. Our parents had the same mindset, and we developed ourselves. We all became professional, got out of the poverty, and we are all living in a place of the world that we always wanted to be as successful human beings. So folks, in conclusion again, anger lives in your heart. Righteous anger lives in your brain. Anger is overt, reaction to the moment. Righteous anger is subtle. It is a strategy. It is not a reaction to the moment, but it is a strategy, a reaction for you to develop a path as to how you could be successful. So as you can see, righteous anger is very much needed in our personal life, in our family life, and in the life of a nation and a people with the example that I have given you. So folks, don't get angry, but get righteous anger and try to develop ourselves for betterment. I'd be very interested to hear what you think and what is your comment and what is your experience. I would love to learn from you. So please subscribe to my channel and leave your comments. Have a great day. One of the best examples of righteous anger at the level of individual, society, country, and the people that I can give you is United States of America, our founding fathers, that is reflected in our Constitution, disgusted by the lack of representation, disgusted by the unfair taxation, lack of dignity. Our founding fathers and folks at that time in 1776 developed a long-term strategy. It is a righteous anger. Yes, there were moments like Boston Tea Party where overt anger spilled over, but our founding fathers and our thinkers found out a way to convert that overt anger into a stable, sustained, righteous anger, leading to our independence and our Constitution, where all people are created equal and every individual human, general public, got a dignity. That was the ultimate revenge from the apathy of the king and disrespect of the king to the common people. And that is a wonderful strategy to follow for any nation or anyone in our individual life.